Now it's time to move on to the next part of section 2, and this is a section of, or this part of the section is made up of rounds of different stripes which we add onto the outside edge of the blanket. You may be thinking, as mine does as well, that your section of squares is looking a little bumpy. Don't worry at all. Once we start adding the stripes to it, it will all flatten out. Believe me, I mean, I'm just going to actually slip in a picture of this section of the blanket in the finished blanket, which hasn't been washed, it hasn't been blocked, it hasn't been stretched in any way, but you will see that once the extra rounds start appearing, this all goes nice and flat. So I'll just pop that in now. Right, we're going to be working with Stylecraft Special in the shade Denim. So it's not the baby denim, we're on to the Stylecraft Special denim. And the first thing what we're going to do is flip the blanket onto the wrong side, because I like to turn my blanket as many times as I can to keep it looking nice and straight. So it's on the wrong side, the stitch marker is underneath, and you can see that the wrong side of the join as you go is showing at this point. That's one of the reasons, or that's the main reason why you always do your join as you go on the front. Right, so we're on the wrong side of the blanket to give us a little bit of balance, and I'm going to attach my yarn in any corner, it doesn't matter which corner. And I'm going to be working with clusters of granny trebles. So we're back to working with a treble stitch rather than the half treble that you used in the join as you go. Let me just get this adjusted to be in the right place. So I've attached my yarn and I'm going to chain 2 and put 2 trebles into the corner. So now that we've got the corner started, we just move on, and we've got 2 spaces coming up where we put in 3 treble stitches. That's one, and the second one. And now we come to the part where you've got the 2 squares joining from the previous round. And there's something we've got to do a little bit differently at this point, because we want to actually have one of these clusters of trebles sitting on top of that join. If we put 3 trebles in a corner and then 3 trebles in another corner, we're going to vastly increase the number of stitches that we have in the blanket, and the whole thing will start to get very wavy indeed. So we're going to put a cluster that sits right on top, and there's a simple way of doing that. You just need to put 1 treble into the first of the corners, and then we're going to do a treble 2 together stitch. So we're going to go back into, we've yarned over, go back into that same corner space and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Now normally you would then yarn over and pull through the last 2, but we're going to leave these ones on the hook for the time being, and we're going to, instead we're going to yarn over and then find the second corner and insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. And maybe you can see that what you've done is you've got 2 stitches which end up as 1 stitch. They're a kind of inverted V shape. Then we have another treble stitch to finish that cluster off. And there you can see it. These are the normal treble 3 clusters, and this one looks a little bit different, but in actually you can see that there are only 3 stitches at the top of it, because we've decreased one of these stitches in the middle. And that's how you put a cluster over a join like that. Now you're going to work all round the blanket with 3 trebles in each of the 2 spaces between the joins. So there's 1, and then a second group of 3 trebles. And then we're at the next join. So I'll just do that again to let you see. So we're making 1 treble stitch in the first corner, and then yarn over, put your hook in, yarn over and pull through the first 2, leaving 2 on your hook. Yarn over, find the next corner, put your hook in, yarn over and pull up a loop. Therefore, you've got 4 loops sitting on your hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2. You've got 3 left on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3. And then finish off with a final treble stitch. There we go. So that's what you're going to do, working all the way round. And when you come to a corner, an outside corner like that, treble 3, chain 2, treble 3, and then continue. So once you get back to the beginning, all the way round, all you need to do is treble 3 into the final corner, because we've only done half of it, treble 3, chain 2, and then slip stitch to the top of the first chain 2. Or if you find it too difficult to actually find that first chain 2, there's nothing wrong with slip stitching into the very first treble stitch. You can do that. It's much easier to see, and that's not going to affect the pattern in any way. So you can slip stitch into the top of the first treble stitch if you like, and then that's that round complete, and you will just snip your yarn and slip your yarn through and snip it, and that's you finished with this round of granny trebles. So I'll do that, and I'll come back and show you what happens with the next round after that. So by the time you've gone round all 4 sides, you're back to the very first corner where you started, and it's just 3 trebles, chain 2, and then you need to slip stitch. And like I said, you can either slip stitch into the very top of the first of the chain 2, or the top of the chain 2s, or you can slip stitch into the very first treble stitch that you made way back and pull through, and that's you got your corner done. Now, for the purposes of keeping you right, the number of clusters of granny clusters around each side is 25, and that includes the cluster in each corner. You count these as one of the 25. So you've got 25 clusters around each side. Now we're moving on to do something slightly different. But again, we're going to flip the blanket over. And the colour we're going to be working with is a darker one again. It's the Stylecraft Special shade Lobelia. I'll push that other one out the way. And as you can see, we are beginning to get a little bit deeper in tone as we go further out from the centre. That's the plan. Now, this is a slightly different thing that we're going to do, because we're not doing granny clusters in this round. We're going to just do simple granny stitches. So you want to start again in a corner. We've turned the blanket, remember, so the blanket is back onto the front side. It's showing with the stitch marker in the middle. And we're attaching the yarn, and we're going to chain 2 as usual. And this time, when we're working the corners, we're not going to put three trebles in. The chain 2 counts as the first treble stitch, and we're going to put one more into the corner, and that is all we're going to put in for that half of the corner. And then simply all you need to do is treble stitch into the top of every stitch along the edge. So just look for those V shapes, which are the tops of the stitches, and put one treble stitch into each one. It's very straightforward, but it just makes a slightly different looking stripe when it comes to providing a little bit of interest in the blanket. So one treble stitch in every stitch, so it looks like that. Now when you come along to the end and you get to the corner, treble 2, chain 2, treble 2, and go round the corner. So I will see you when you've gone all the way round with that, and we're ready to start with the next round. So now that you've gone all round with the treble stitch round, you should have 79 stitches on each side, and that kind of makes sense. If you think you've had 25 clusters in the previous round, and there are 3 stitches in each cluster, that's 75 stitches, plus the 2 treble stitches at either end on the corners. So that's 79 stitches. Now we're on to the next round now. Oh, I was just going to show you, we're on the right side here, and as you can see, things are beginning to flatten out really nicely. As we're adding these extra rounds, all the bumps are beginning to disappear. Right, so I'm going to be using the Stylecraft Special in Pale Rose for this round, and this is almost a repeat of the previous round but with a different stitch. So we're going to attach the yarn in a corner, and this time we're going to be using the smallest stitch, which is of course the double crochet. Just to avoid confusion, that's single crochet in US terms. Now normally when I do a double crochet, you would have to chain 1 instead of 2, which takes you to the height of the stitch, and then you want to forget that you've done that and actually just, I'm yarning over, and actually just ignore it, and we're going to put 2 double crochet stitches into the corner. It's just that the single chain is not the most attractive thing, so I just put in 2 double crochets. Oh, right, let me show you how to do a double crochet. Very, very easy. You just don't yarn over, you just put your hook into the space, pull up the loop, yarn over, and pull through the 2 loops. And you do that twice for the corner. And remember that you've done that, so when you come around to finish off this corner, just disregard that first chain 1 and slip stitch into the first double single, start again, double crochet stitch. So all you're going to have to do is work along with 1 double crochet stitch in each of the tops of the treble stitches from the previous round. In these 2 rounds, I tend to keep my tension a little bit looser. I just feel that it doesn't pull in just quite so much if you keep these ones a little bit looser, and that's your double crochet stitch. So you need to work all the way around the blanket, and I'll see you at the other end when we're ready to start the next of the rounds of stripes. So this is what it looks like once you've gone all the way around with the double crochet. This was the final corner, and it has the 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then slip stitched over just forgotten about that first chain 1 and slip stitched into the first of those very first chain double crochets, the 2 double crochets. It makes a really nice what would you say, a really nice sharp corner when you're doing a little double crochet edging. Right, so we've got, let me just check my blanket to remind myself, yep, we've got 2 more rounds of the stripes to do before we move on to the next section, and we're going back to the colour that we used in the first round, which is the denim. I have to think about that one. There's so many different shades of blue in this blanket, but this is the Stylecraft denim, Stylecraft Special and Denim, so that's what we're going to be working with again. And of course, as usual, we're going to turn the blanket over. So this is it back on the front side of the blanket. You can see that we've got the stitch marker here, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and do the treble clusters again, just for a change, and we're going to do 2 rounds of treble clusters in this colour. So what we want to do is, forget that my blanket isn't finished all the way around because this is my sample. I'm only working on one side for the video. So what we want to do is pull apart and find the corner, and we're going to start back working with treble stitches. So we're going to start with a chain 2, and I didn't actually say that the count for the double crochet round will be 4 more than the previous round. So we've got 83 stitches along each side, which includes the 2 in each corner. Right, so we're going to chain 2 and then put 2 trebles into that corner. And now obviously we don't have a space to work in like we normally do when we're doing the granny clusters. So what we want to do is we want to count along, and we're going to miss 2 stitches out, and we're going to make our cluster of 3 trebles in the 3rd stitch along. So we're putting 3 treble stitches into the 3rd stitch along. And there you can see, I'll lay that down and you can maybe see how the granny clusters are beginning to appear. And we're going to miss 2 of the double crochet stitches and into the 3rd along for the next one. And that's all you need to do. Every 3rd stitch along, put in your 3 treble stitches. So I'm going to work along to the end of this side, and then I'm going to show you what happens when we get to the corner. So I'll see you back at that point. So now we've got to the end of the first side with the treble clusters, and we're at the corner. Now it might be the case, because it does happen sometimes, that you might have got the count a little bit wrong with the pale rose double crochet round. It's not overly essential if you don't have exactly the right number that I said you should have. But the important thing is that we have the right number of these treble clusters, which will then feed into the rest of the blanket and make everything else fit. So the count of these treble clusters that you want to have by the time you've got from one corner to the other is 29. And I'm just about, you can see I've got 2 of my stitches, my double crochet stitches left, and I'm going to go into the corner to make my 3 treble stitches. Chain 2 and 3 trebles to form the corner. Now if, for example, you had 1 too many of the pink double crochet stitches, then you would just jump over 3. If you had 1 too few, then you would just jump over 1. But as long as you get the 29 clusters along the side, you'll be fine. So that is the first of the treble cluster rounds, and I also thought it would be interesting just to let you see why I chose to do the double crochet round before the trebles. And the double crochet round is obviously on the wrong side. This is the front of the blanket, but because we've been turning, the double crochet round is on its reverse side. But I think that's quite nice. I quite like these little V shapes showing, and it just makes a feature of the border that's going around this center section of the blanket. So you would just need to work all the way round with your treble clusters and doing each corner the same way. When you get back to the first corner, you've got to finish it off with treble 3 and chain 2 and slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2. So I'm going to come back at that point because we're then going to do another round of the treble clusters, and I'll just show you quickly how to start that off, and then I'll leave you to finish it off, and that will be the end of this section. Right, so I'm going to finish off round 1 of this double round. So I've got my 3 trebles to put into the corner where we started, and chain 2 as usual, and then slip stitch into either the top of the first chain 2 or the first treble. I'm not going to cause a problem if you put it into the treble. So that's this section finished, well, at least this round of the denim finished. And we've got one more round to do, and so you don't need to cut your yarn, you just need to chain 2 and then again flip over, and I think as you did when you were making the small squares, you'll see that that first chain 2 is now right on the right hand side of this corner space. So make your complete corner to start with. Chain 2 is the first equivalent of the first treble, so put in 2 more trebles and then chain 2 and 3 trebles. 1, 2, 3. So you've made a complete corner to start with, which you will not need to work into when you come all the way round. When you come back to this point, you'll just need to slip stitch after the last cluster of trebles. And of course, because you're working into treble clusters, there's no counting needed. It's simply moving on to the first space along and putting in 3 trebles. So this is a very easy round to do. Now you had 29 clusters in the round below, and your granny cluster rounds always increase by 1. So by the time you've finished this second round, you'll have 30 in along each side. So this is the end of section 2. I won't bother coming back to show you what it looks like at the end. You'll see that when we're ready with section 3.